Happy New Year. I do hope you are ready to take on 2020 because this is going to be a good year. And one of the fun things that we do here at Great Lakes Church every single week when we do a talk is we welcome our different campuses. So I want to say hello to those of you in Kenosha, watching at our Kenosha campus on Sunday morning. To those of you in Racine watching, we say hello to you. We say hello to those of you watching online. And of course, those who are gathered with me right here in the auditorium, Weekends on Wednesday. Yeah. They've got energy even on January 1st. Awesome. So here's the deal. Every year at this time, the first couple days of January, we start thinking ahead about the coming weeks and the coming months and how we're going to connect people in our faith community. Okay, how we're going to do our next group season in the spring. And so if you've been around for a while, you know that typically Pastor Marie leads the charge on this. But at the end of 2019, something very sad happened. Marie retired. Okay. So Marie retired, and now she is moving to Africa for a season of her life and working and doing different mission stuff there. And so consequently, yours truly is now going to be leading the charge in the spring, okay? This is something you ought to be a little bit nervous about. But the reason I'm bringing this up is if you have led a group in the past, I'm talking the last couple of years, I just want you to know that on January 2nd, you should receive an email. You should have received an email January 2nd, all right? So this is kind of hard because I'm actually speaking at Weekends on Wednesday, and I'm trying to all right? But January 2nd, if you're watching on Sunday, it's already in your box. Check your spam box, your email folder, and I'm not going to hide why I sent it. It wasn't just to say hello. It was to say, I need your help this season. We're going to launch this thing. We're going to go big. And so I want you to consider doing what you do best. And that's helping us create a culture of fun, helping us create a culture of engagement, helping us create a culture for people to get together, meet each other, but also mature as followers of Jesus. And so we've got just a couple of weeks to be ready for the spring. So look for that email, all right? Now today we're launching this brand new series, and we're just calling it 2020. Like, how do we see clearly in this new year? How do we look ahead? How do we have a bright future for us? And so the question that I want to start with today, and I want you to think about, is this: what would it take for you to have the best year of your life? Now, it sounds like a really big question, right? Because some of you have lived 95 years. Others of you have lived 40 years. Some of you have lived 15 years. But what would it take for you to have the best year of your life? And I'm not just talking about a life that, it looks good on the surface and everybody's like, whoa, check them out. I'm talking about a life where deep down, regardless of how it looks on the surface, this is a solid year. This is a good year. Now, we live in a culture that is all about the appearance, right? We live in a culture where we're all kind of obsessed with everything looking good and putting on a front, not letting people see our struggles. And, we kind of airbrush as much of our life as we feel is necessary to have an appearance that looks good to other people. In fact, one of my favorite news stories is actually from a couple of years ago. I read it initially in USA Today and did some research. I'm like, this kind of seems really out there. Like, this really happened. Bottom line, a family decided to hire a photographer, claimed to be a professional photographer, to take their family photos. And the photos were taken, and they didn't get them back for about 8 months. And finally, they got them in the mail, and when they opened them, they realized pretty quickly this person who claimed to be a professional was actually an amateur. And the reason they were able to realize that is because these photos were way over airbrushed. I mean, they were way edited in a crazy way. In fact, let me just show you how badly these photos were edited. And apparently this was not a joke. It did enough research on it. They said, this is not a joke. It's obvious the person did not know what they were doing. So the mother in this crew here, she calls the photographer and says, what the heck did you send us? And the photographer, this lady, says, well, I admit I didn't ever learn how to really edit photos, but I did my best, right? And so what the mom eventually does is throws these pictures online, doesn't make fun of the photographer, doesn't want to shame her, but puts them out there for a laugh. And I think this is what a lot of us do with our life, right? We put out this version of ourselves that isn't real, and then we feel like we have to live up to it. And if we admit it, man, over time it gets exhausting. So let me ask you the question again. What would it take for you to have the best year of your life up to this point? Like, what different mindset? What different priorities, what different relationship strengths are you going to need in order to see clearly in 2020 and end up making better decisions? Now, for most of us, the beginning of January is the right time to ask that question. Right? This is the time where we look ahead and we consider what we want to accomplish and who we want to be in the months ahead, which is why studies have been done on this. 40 to 50% of Americans at this time of year set some sort of goals and come up with some sort of resolution. Multiple studies have been done on it. I mean, for years, studies have been done on New Year's resolution. It doesn't matter what year you choose. The resolutions are pretty much the same every single year, right? What do you think they are? Lose weight's the big one. Work out, stop smoking, eat healthier, spend more time with family, read a book, right? They're always the same thing. And I'm sure this is very psychological that we do it at the beginning of the year because we could really do it at any point, right? We could do it in July, we could do it in November, but nobody in November is saying, this is my year to eat healthy. Nobody in November is saying, hey, I'm gonna have a tight budget for the last 5 weeks of the year. Nobody really does that. And so it's psychological in many ways. But for most of us, we just need this new calendar year to think about making changes. And so when it comes to goals or resolutions, people pretty much fall into one of two categories, right? The first category people fall into is dreamers. Dreamers say, this is my year. These are the people, when you see them in the lobby, it's like they're speed walking, right? They've got their 3-ring binder and everything's color coordinated and they've got all these tabs with all their goals because they're gonna accomplish this. I mean, just stay out of their way. And there's guys like me, I have dreams, right? And I could probably put them on a 3x5 note card, but they would look at that, they'd spit all over it, man, throw it away. Because for them, this is their year and this is a big deal. The other category, when it comes to resolutions and goals, is realist, right? Realists are the people who are like, you said that last year. That's what realists say, right? They're not real big on setting goals because they know that most people who set goals never achieve them, which is true. 27% of resolutions are broken within the first week. 80% of resolutions are broken within the first 6 weeks, which means by Valentine's Day, we're pretty much done with our diets, and it's like, pass the chocolates, please. And so regardless of which category you fall into, you love setting goals, you hate setting goals, you're cynical about goals, whatever category you fall into, I do think all of us can agree on this. There is something about looking forward that's kind of appealing. There's something about looking ahead that just does something. It's fun to be hopeful, right? It's fun to dream. It's fun to think, to imagine what our life can become and what's possible in life. And it's important to think about what's possible. In fact, every major breakthrough in life, whether it's in technology or in business, every major breakthrough happened because there was an individual or a group of individuals who sat around and imagined it was possible, right? At some point in history, there was a group of individuals who believed it was possible to get to the moon. At some point in history, there was someone who believed it was possible to store thousands and thousands of songs onto a digital device that would fit into your pocket. At some point in history, an individual believed it was possible to create a product that would eliminate a room with light. And so it's fun to dream. And it's fun to think of possibilities, and it's fun to move forward and march toward a goal. There's something about moving ahead. What's not fun is turning around and looking at the messes we've created in our life. What's not fun is turning around and looking at the pile of regrets that we have. What's not fun is seeing the garbage that's accumulated in our life. What's not fun is looking back and seeing how our decisions caused wrecks to happen. What's not fun is looking back at the losses and the mistakes and the failures, which is why our tendency is to look forward and not look back, right? We just prefer, we're gonna ignore these things. We're not gonna talk about these things. We don't wanna think about these things. Come on, we're ready for a great future. But the messiness of the past and the mistakes that we've made and the hurts and the pains that we carry with us, some of them we're very aware of, others we're not aware of, right? But the hurts that we carry with us, all of those things have a way of blurring our vision. And so we think we're seeing clearly, and we think we got these hopes and dreams, and I'm moving forward, and here's my future. And we don't realize, man, we're not even seeing clearly because we've got all these unaddressed issues in our life. In 1986, the National Football League made a decision that changed how football was played. All right, they noticed that throughout the course of any given game, different calls would be made by the referees that weren't the right calls. And so what would happen in the heat of the moment, in real time, refs were making the best calls that they could. I mean, they were doing the best job that was possible for them. And then all these viewers at home are watching the same game, and what they're doing is they're saying, hey, the ref got it wrong. And it's so obvious to them because they're seeing it from a different angle, right? They're seeing it from a different perspective, and they're seeing it in slow motion. And so the viewers are like, dude, the ref sucks. The ref, get rid of the ref. But the ref's just doing their best job. And so in 1986, the NFL implemented something called instant replay. And so there are certain times in the game during critical plays where the ref just stops the game, right? And they start to watch a video, someone up in a booth, right? They review these split-second plays from all types of angles in slow motion because they don't want one bad call to impact the outcome of the game. And so what do? They closely examine it. And then the ref comes out on the field. They turn on their mic and they typically say something like this: after further review, the play stands as is. Right? After further review, the ruling on the field will remain the same, right? Or sometimes they'll say, after further review, the ruling on the field has been overturned. We've changed our minds. What happened is they took a little bit of time and they had a little bit different perspective, and it gave them the clarity they needed. So Socrates is credited with saying this, that the unexamined life is not worth living. Now, it's possible you're sitting here at this moment and you're thinking, Dave, this just sounds like a TED Talk, right? This just sounds like a motivational speech. I could get this anywhere. And granted, at the start of this talk, this is exactly where it sounds. So you got to hang with me here. But I want you to know one of the things that we value, and this is on our new program / outline, is we help people grow. Like this is from day one. We have been committed to this, helping people grow and not just maintain. And so I want you to know, as we get started in this series, our goal in this isn't to just do a TED Talk, and it's not just to motivate you and not just to get you out of here, hoorah, and all excited. Our goal is that when we leave here, we have the steps and the tools needed to start to process some things and to grow, not just maintain in our life. So the unexamined life is not worth living. It's very tempting at this time of year, right, to talk about what we're going to achieve and accomplish and accumulate. And it's fun to dream and it's fun to imagine all types of possibilities, and we should do that, right? It's important to do that. But before we do that, it's even more important for us to pause our lives, to turn around, and to take some time to reflect on the different mistakes we've made, on the regrets we've accumulated, on the decisions we've made over the past year that have hurt us or hurt other people. Because if we do not look back from different angles and different perspectives and take time to just kind of watch our life a little bit in slow motion, we're going to move forward this year with blurred vision. We're going to move forward and we're going to repeat the same mistakes we made in 2019. So King Solomon, the author of Proverbs, writes this. He says, wise people think before they act. Fools don't, and even brag about their foolishness. So when a company launches a new product and they decide, well, we just gotta ship it, man. We just gotta rush it. And they don't take time to do market research and they don't take time to see how many people actually need the product. What often happens is the product fails. When a new business launches it and the person who launches it doesn't really sit down to come up with a good business plan and a good strategy, what happens? The business fails. So King Solomon says, wise people think before they act. One of my favorite TV shows is Shark Tank. Any Shark Tank fans? All right, different auditoriums, come on. Gotta love Shark Tank. It's a show where an inventor or an entrepreneur pitches their product, right? They pitch their idea to a group of investors, hoping that these investors are gonna take their money and invest in their product. And they're gonna make this individual very, very wealthy. That's kind of the goal and that's kind of the hope. And sometimes the product that's introduced or the idea the concept that's kind of introduced, it's just amazing. And it's obvious market research has been done. And it's obvious this person's really thought through. And so what happens in those moments is the sharks, these investors, compete among each other trying to be the person who invests in that company. They want to make a lot of money off of this individual and off of their product. But what's interesting is how many individuals show up with a product and they've not really done a lot of market research. They have this idea and they don't realize not a whole lot of people connect. I mean, it's a very niche market that's going to buy into that idea, but they almost don't care because they've got passion and they've got drive and they got work ethic. So they want to ignore reality in order to get these sharks to invest in this stuff. And the sharks are smart and they're like, no, we're not going to, come on, nobody's going to buy that. That's a very limited niche product you got going on. If you want to be successful in moving forward in 2020, you have to deal with the reality. You have to deal with the reality of your mistakes. You have to deal with the reality of your past decisions. You have to be able to identify, acknowledge, and learn from the things that have gone on in the past. Otherwise, you move forward with blurred vision and you continue to make the same mistakes. Now, here's the thing we know about mistakes. We're really good about learning from our mistakes in the areas that don't really matter. You think about this. Where are the areas we learn the most? The things that really don't matter. So you start to learn to bake and you screw up, right? You don't know how to measure ingredients correctly. You think baking soda and baking powder are the same thing. You don't realize how important it is to preheat the oven, right? You don't grease the pan correctly. All right, so you're learning to bake, you make some mistakes, but you quickly learn, oh, I can't do that. And so you don't make the same mistakes over and over and over. Same thing with grilling. First couple times you grill, you're out there. And you're grilling and you overcook something, you undercook something, but you quickly learn. We have an amazing ability to learn from our mistakes in the areas that don't really matter. Right, first time I played Texas Hold'em poker, I knew very little about the game. I had a cheat sheet that I was looking at, and the people with me were cool with that because they just knew. And so I was dealt pocket aces. Right, I got 2 aces, which is a really good way to start the game. But then it gets around to me. It's my first time like betting and trying to figure this out. And I go all in. And I put my cards down. I'm all excited. And so if you've ever played Texas Hold'em, this is not the way to start a game. Everybody folds. The round lasts about 15 seconds, and I make no money off of it. The game doesn't end there, but it's like, no, that round, I wasn't smart in drawing people in. But guess what? I never made that mistake again. When I was in college, I spent summer traveling with my buddy, James Grogan. He's spoken here at Great Lakes. We traveled in a 1985 Buick LeSabre with a car top carrier on it. So this is how we traveled. That's me, just kicking back, man. I was cool back in the day, right? So here's the deal. The car top carrier, we forgot to lock it one time. And so we go around a corner on a city street. It wasn't a highway, but it go around the corner on a city street. Thing opens up, and a few things fall out. We feel stupid. We stop in the middle of the intersection. We're just 19 years old, and so we're putting this stuff back in. Guess what? Never forgot to lock it again. We're really good about learning from our mistakes in the areas that don't really matter. Early on in my marriage, I had a car. It was rusting in different areas, and so on one of the doors, I just decided I'm going to try to fix this myself. And so I did some research. I bought some paint. And then I decided to become my own body shop in learning how to fix this thing, right? And I obviously didn't know really what I was doing because when I was done, there was this square patch on the door that was stood out from the rest. In fact, I found a picture of it. If you look closely, it's just like this square patch. I mean, it kind of blends in, but it's just obvious. Dude, Dave, this is not your gift, right? So guess what? Never did that again. We're really good about learning from our mistakes in the areas that don't really matter. But we're really bad about learning from our mistakes in the areas that matter most. We're really bad about learning from our mistakes in the areas that matter most. I mean, just think about life, right? When it comes to money, when it comes to sex, when it comes to relationships, when it comes to handling conflict with people, when it comes to the way we use our words, when it comes to our careers, when it comes to parenting, when it comes to marriage, it just seems like we continue to make the same mistakes over and over and over and over. Because as humans, we're really bad about learning from our mistakes in the areas that matter the most, which is frustrating. Because you know this about life. I mean, you could do everything right, and there's still going to be a lot of pain. Still gonna be hurt, there's still gonna be loss, there's still gonna be financial difficulty. I mean, you could do everything right. There's a lot of unavoidable pain and hurt and regrets that happen in our life, and disappointments, right? And so why would we add to the unavoidable pain and hurt and disappointments in life? Why would we add to that with avoidable pain and hurt and disappointments by the decisions we make? I mean, just think about this. Like, why would we continue to make the same mistakes over and over and over and just add to the pain in our life? But there's this tendency we have just to overcomplicate our lives by repeating the same mistakes over and over and over again. And what's interesting, and this is not a problem that's just unique to us. The Apostle Paul, he talks about his own ongoing challenge. Here's a guy who's admired because of his faith. He's admired for his leadership. And here's what he writes about his own struggle. He says, I don't really understand myself, for I want to do what is right, but I don't do it. Instead, I do what I hate. This is fascinating. The Apostle Paul, this iconic leader in the history of the church, says, I know what the right thing to do is, but I have a difficult time doing it. We can relate, right? We know what the right thing to do is, right? Just pick any area of life. Let's pick finances. We all know how to be healthy financially. You spend less than you make. We all know that if you invest a little bit of money over a long period of time, you're going to be financially secure. We all know that when it comes to being physically healthy, we have to eat a certain way and we have to exercise. We all know that. We all know that when we hurt someone, whether it's intentional or unintentional, we should apologize to them. And we teach our kids this from a very young age. We know what to do, right? We all know that when we're around family, especially on occasions like holidays and we're to be with each other, developing a relationship, we all know that we shouldn't sit around playing on our phones. We know that, right? We all know that we would be better off if we read more books and watched less television. But knowing something doesn't mean we're going to change. Knowing something doesn't mean I'm going to be motivated in life to take a different path. Knowing something doesn't mean I'm going to have the self-control to do better. And the reason this is so important to understand is because all of us have a tendency to lie to ourselves and think that as we get older, and as we have more experiences in life, and as we see more things, we're going to become wiser. I love what Pastor Andy Stanley from North Point Church in Atlanta, Georgia, says about this. He says, experience doesn't make you wiser. Evaluated experience makes you wiser. The only way for us to truly change, the only way for us to have a different year in 2020 than we had in 2019 is for us to pause our lives, to look back, and to sincerely evaluate some of the mistakes we made, some of the decisions we made, and to do our best to learn from them. And then after we learn from them, to be proactive in making different decisions so we don't make the same mistakes. Right? The key verse for this series, you'll hear me bring it up a couple of times this series. As a dog returns to its vomit, so a fool repeats his foolishness. As a dog returns to his vomit, so a fool repeats his foolishness. How many times have you watched someone that you love and you care about? They jump from bad relationship to bad relationship to bad relationship, and you don't want to be rude, but you are just dying inside because you want to walk up to them and you just want to say, are you that stupid? Like, what is wrong with you? Well, here's what's wrong. Experience doesn't make you wiser. Going through the same thing over and over and over doesn't make you any smarter. It's evaluated experience that makes you wiser. So this past summer, I officiated a wedding for a couple at our church. It was their second marriage. And rarely, when I officiate a marriage for a couple getting married for a second time, rarely do they ever want to meet prior to their wedding to kind of prepare themselves for their second marriage. I mean, I get that. Their kind of attitude, I totally understand this. I've been there, I've done that, no need to, repeat. I've learned my lessons. But this couple, they chose to meet with me on 4 different occasions so they could prepare themselves for their second marriage. And so we went through this book together called Saving Your Second Marriage Before It Starts. Now, that's not normal. What's normal is just to kind of move on. What's normal is just to convince ourselves, well, I've got this. And the reason we think this way, the reason it's so tempting to just kind of move on and not deal with our past is because we kind of look at our watch and we're figuring like, I'm going to miss out. Like life's moving at such a fast pace. I don't want to miss anything. The reason we have a tendency to just kind of keep moving is because time's always going. And so we think, I've got to do this now. I got to get this new job now, right? I've got to take the vacation now. I've got to start dating now. I've got to buy this now. I've got to have another kid now. I've got to get married now. Otherwise, I'm going to miss out. We think time's our enemy, and so we're fighting against time. In reality, time is our friend. When we pause, when we slow down our life, and we look back and we decide, I'm going to deal with some unresolved issues from my past year or the past couple of years, I'm going to deal with my mistakes, what happens is healing starts to take place, and we become healthier as individuals. But that doesn't happen overnight. It takes time to become healthy. And we see this evidence all throughout the ancient scriptures. Right? People made mistakes. They screwed up their lives. They did things that were hurtful to people. They did things in many cases that were just shameful. They didn't want anybody to know about it. That's kind of like stage one of their life. And then we see this other stage in their life where there's this rebound. And it's like God's doing great things in them, and he's redeeming their past, meaning he's making good come out of the bad in their life. And we're like, woo! And they become the champions we talk about, and we shout out their names, and we're like, look at this person, they're amazing. What we don't ever talk about or think about is the amount of time it took from them to get from who they were to the new person they are. Like this gap of time that took place and unfolded, right? And we could just, tons of examples out there. Let me just pick one, the famous Moses, right? Good old Moses. He grows up in Egypt. As a young man, he gets really passionate and he kills an Egyptian. He kills an Egyptian and he really loses his place of influence in Egypt. And so he's got to take off as a fugitive, and he's just gone. And then we read that he's back. And when he's back, he's this great leader to the Jewish people. They've been in slavery for hundreds of years, but Moses is the guy. He leads them out of Egypt. And it was like, whoa, and he's this iconic guy. What we don't talk about is from the time Moses left Egypt to the time Moses returned was 40 years. 40 years of God having an opportunity to do something in Moses' heart and in Moses' life. And yet our tendency, as we make a mistake, our tendency is to do something shameful that we never want people to know about. Our tendency is to cause a bunch of wrecks and a bunch of damage here, and then boom, let's move on. It's a new year. And so we've got unaddressed issues and unaddressed pain in our life. And we tend to ignore those things, and we tend to psych ourselves up, and we come up with all sorts of dreams of what we're going to achieve and accomplish and accumulate in the coming months. But let me tell you why that's a mistake. It's a mistake because when we go through something difficult or painful in our life, whether it's a result of a decision we made or a decision someone else made, if we don't take the time to deal with it, what happens is we carry it with us into every environment, into every relationship we have. And we don't realize that our vision's blurred. We don't realize we're not seeing clearly. We don't realize we're not thinking clearly. But we're not. Our emotions are all over the place. But when we take time for counseling, when we take time to surround ourselves with a group of friends and work through the addiction that's gotten control of our life, or taken control of our life, when we slow down enough to deal with the depth of some of the sin and some of the garbage inside of us, what happens is we become whole. But if we don't deal with that, we're run by our emotions. And emotions, this is like a temperature. They go up and down all the time. And they go up a lot faster than they come down, don't they? And so it's possible that from the past year, from 2019, we don't even think about it, but we're carrying with us into this year some anger, some resentment, some jealousy. We're carrying with us some insecurity. We're carrying with us some trust issues. We're carrying with us things that maybe we don't even realize we're carrying. And so our emotions are off balance. And we've got this pain in our life that has to be dealt with. And the reason it has to be dealt with is because people in pain become very self-absorbed. And I know that sounds really horrible, but it's true. People in pain become very self-absorbed. And that's not a bad thing necessarily. It's just a thing. Right? It is what it is. It's a part of life. When you are in physical pain, let's say you have a migraine. Let's say you have a backache, right? For some reason, you know this. That kind of makes its way into every conversation you have with someone. Oh, man, how you doing? Great problem. Oh, the migraine. Ugh. It's just life. I've been dealing with a cough literally for 2 weeks now. It's been nonstop, and over like the holidays, I ran into several people in different settings, and people say, Dave, I hope you're getting rest. Dave, I hope you're enjoying the holidays. Somehow, in every one of the conversations, the same thing came up. Oh, I'm making it, man, but I've been on Robitussin. I've been on cough drops. Oh, dear God, you'd think I had Ebola, man. It's like the biggest man cold of what I'm going through. I went to the doctor, and they gave me a Z-Pack, and I'm telling you, like, there's something about it when you're in pain because you're obsessed with it. That's what you're thinking about. That's what you're feeling. Well, that's not just true of physical pain. It's also true with emotional pain. You become very self-absorbed. And that's why when you've got a friend who's going through a very tough time, whenever you have a conversation with that friend, you end up talking about the same things. You end up talking about their tough time. And I'm not mocking them. And we need people in our life who can go with us, right, through difficult times. But you get with them, it's going to say the same thing. She hurt me. This shouldn't have happened to me. I was ripped off here. And you're like, dear God, it's the same story over and over and over. It's because that's emotional pain. It has to come out. We got to talk about it. But we become very self-absorbed. And self-absorbed people end up making self-absorbed decisions. Right? When I'm self-absorbed, you know who I'm thinking about? Me. I can't help it. It's just part of my life. I'm thinking about myself. I'm thinking about my pain. I'm thinking about my difficulty and my challenges. I'm thinking, all I want to do is be comfortable. When I'm in pain, it's hard for me to hear from people what I really need to hear from them. When I'm in pain, I can't receive what I need to receive. When I'm in pain, I can't learn what I need to learn. It takes a whole lot of time to get me to that point. It takes time for my emotions to calm down. It takes time for my heart to open up. Now, I'm not suggesting that we don't have big dreams for 2020. I think we should. But I am suggesting that we slow down, we identify the mistakes that we've made, the regretful decisions we made, the hurts that we accumulated in 2019, and truly work on the root of those problems so that eventually we can get to the other side of those things with true wisdom and a sense of purpose for our life. And we won't be as prone to make the same mistakes again. In the early years of his life, the Apostle Paul made some significant mistakes. He was self-righteous. He participated in the persecution of Jesus' followers. He accumulated so much baggage that when he actually became a follower of Jesus, other followers of Jesus didn't want to be around him. They knew what he had done. And he acknowledges the pain that he caused. Here's what he says. He said, this is a trustworthy saying, and everyone should accept it. Christ Jesus came into the world to save sinners, and I am the worst of them all. Paul slows down. He realizes, hey, I've caused a lot of hurt. I've caused a lot of pain. But it became a catalyst for God doing some great things in him. Later on, the Apostle Paul's reflecting on how God leveraged this stuff in his life that he had done. And he's thinking about some of the things he's gone through and how God's connected the dots. And here's what Paul writes. He says, and we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose for them. So if you're willing to slow down, you're willing to identify the mistakes you made, the pain you caused, the hurt maybe you brought on someone, maybe the hurt someone brought on you, the words that were spoken. If you identify the mistakes and the pain, and you're willing to work through it, and you're willing to learn from your experiences, God can connect the dots on everything in your life. And he can leverage those things and bring something meaningful and something purposeful from them. But if you rush, if you just move on, if you don't think you have anything to learn from anybody, if you don't think there's anything to evaluate, if you just insist on airbrushing your life and trying to put out this persona that everything's good all the time, the mistakes you made in 2019, they're going to be made in 2020. The regrets you have in 2019 are going to be the regrets you have in 2020. And I don't want that for you, and I don't want that for me. And so I'm going to give you a little homework this week. And I'm going to have the homework as well. Homework is to answer a very simple, straightforward question. Here it is. What mistake do you not want to repeat in 2020? Maybe you look back and say, you know what? I was really careless with my words. I hurt people with my words. I rarely filtered what was on my mind because that's just my personality. Okay, so maybe that's what you don't want to repeat. Or maybe for you, it's saying, I look back and I had a difficult time apologizing. There's something inside of me. I don't know why, but I have a difficult, and I don't want to repeat that. Or maybe for you, you look back and say, man, people did so many good things for me and I didn't express gratitude all that much. I came across as entitled without wanting to. I don't want to repeat that. Or maybe for you, I look back and I made some really unwise relationship decisions again. Or I ignored the addiction in my life and I pretended it wasn't an addiction. Or I drifted from my faith community and I just didn't make it a habit to surround myself with good and godly people in my life. Or maybe I chose to ignore the pain someone caused me and I didn't want to work through the process of forgiveness or talk or deal with it. I was really passive about it. Or maybe for you, I gave people stuff all the time. I was always giving everybody else attention, but I didn't slow down enough for myself. What mistakes did you make in 2019 or that you're just saying, hey, I don't want to make that in 2020? So we want to grow and not maintain. But here's the deal. We can talk about this and we can give some tools and we can give some suggestions, but ultimately it's you and I that got to go through the difficult work of making sure that we don't repeat the past. And so this can be your best year ever. But you have to deal with the past before you ever move forward. And so we're going to talk about in the coming weeks, how exactly do you do that? And I hope you're here for those weeks. But let me pray for you as we wrap up today. Our Heavenly Father, I pray as we look to identify what mistake, what thing in our past is it that we don't want to repeat? What is it in our past that we don't want to see occur in our life over and over and over in 2020? I pray you'd give us the wisdom to identify it and then the courage to do something about it. In Jesus' name, amen.